He had just seen fire fall from the sky, not a symbol, not a vision. Fire, real, violent, consuming wood, stone, dust and water in front of a nation. What no blade could do, what no argument could achieve, happened in a single moment. The altar was gone, the water was gone, the sacrifice was gone, the impossible had become visible. And now he was running, not toward safety, not toward rest. Running because his mind had collapsed inward. His breath was sharp and shallow. His muscles were working without direction. There was no strategy left, only flight. Welcome, and thank you for being here. Today, we will look at Elijah, not at his triumph, but at his unraveling. At the moment, Scripture rarely lingers on, when a prophet who had witnessed undeniable divine power became overtaken by fear, exhaustion, and despair. What happened next reveals something most people miss, not about human weakness, but about how God responds to it. The ground was hard beneath him, dry from long heat. Small stones bit into the soles of his feet with every step. The wind moved fast across the hills, not with comfort, but with insistence, and behind him, though not yet visible, was the threat that had turned his certainty into panic. This is not a story about courage. It is a story about anxiety. Elijah was not a stranger to danger. He had stood before kings. He had confronted a nation. He had lived under threat. But this moment was different. This was not the danger of confrontation. This was the danger of collapse. Jezebel's message had been short, precise, and unambiguous. What he had done to her prophets would be done to him. There was no negotiation implied, no delay offered, only finality. And something in Elijah broke, not spiritually, psychologically, physically, nervously. Scripture does not dramatize this. It states it plainly. He was afraid, and he arose and ran for his life, not walked, ran. The body does not run unless it believes death is near. He did not stop to reason. He did not stop to pray. He did not stop to measure the threat. He ran until the land changed, until the air thinned, until the ground felt unfamiliar. He left his servant behind, not as a symbolic gesture, but because anxiety isolates. It convinces the mind that no one can help. And then he walked another day into the wilderness. Not toward a destination, just away from fear. The wilderness is not poetic in Scripture. It is functional. It strips, it empties. It offers nothing that can distract. No crowds, no noise, no shelter, just space. And in that space, Elijah collapsed. He sat under a broom tree, small, brittle, barely offering shade, and asked to die. Not dramatically, not poetically, simply, it is enough. That sentence is the sound of exhaustion. Not rebellion, not disbelief, exhaustion. He did not say God was unjust. He did not curse heaven. He did not deny what he had seen. He said he could not carry it anymore. And then he lay down and slept. Sleep is not retreat, it is shutdown. The body does not request sleep when it is healthy. It demands it when it is overwhelmed. God did not speak to him yet. God did not correct him. God did not remind him of Mount Carmel. God did not rebuke him for weakness. An angel touched him, not preached, not reasoned, touched, and said only this, "Arise and eat." That is not a spiritual instruction. It is a biological one. Near him was bread baked on hot stones, water, simple physical sustenance. He ate, he drank, and he lay down again. And again the angel returned, not with new information, not with explanation, with the same instruction. Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you. Not, you should be stronger. Not, you should remember what I did. Not, this fear is irrational. The journey is too great for you. God acknowledged his limitation without shame and strengthened him before speaking to him. This is not incidental. It is theological. Elijah then traveled 40 days and 40 nights, not as a test of endurance, but as a slow, deliberate retreat from the noise of panic into a place where God had met his people before. Horeb, Sinai, the mountain of covenant. And when he arrived, he did not emerge victorious. He hid in a cave, not symbolic, practical. Caves mute sound. They shrink space. They reduce exposure. They feel safer to a nervous system that cannot bear openness. And God spoke, not with thunder, not with spectacle, with a question. What are you doing here, Elijah? Not accusation, inquiry, not rhetorical, literal. Where has your fear taken you? Elijah answered, not calmly, not clearly, but with the narrowed vision of a mind under pressure. He spoke of zeal, of abandonment, of isolation, of threat, of being the only one left. Every anxious mind does this. It compresses reality. It filters information until only danger remains. He did not mention fire. He did not mention rain. He did not mention answered prayer, not because those things were untrue, but because anxiety edits memory. God then told him to stand, not to fight, not to confront, to stand. And what followed was not spectacle for spectacle's sake. It was a dismantling of expectations. A wind came, strong enough to tear rocks from the mountain. But the Lord was not in the wind. An earthquake followed, violent, destabilizing. But the Lord was not in the earthquake, then fire again. But the Lord was not in the fire. Elijah had just come from fire, from spectacle, from public power, from unmistakable signs, and now God was stripping those categories away. And then came a sound, not silence, not absence, a low whisper, not forceful, not commanding, a voice that did not overwhelm, a voice that required proximity. And when Elijah heard it, he did not collapse. He covered his face, not from fear of destruction, but from recognition. This was not power as threat. This was power as presence. And God asked the same question again, not because he forgot, because Elijah had not yet understood his own answer. And Elijah repeated himself. Same words, same compression, same isolation narrative. God did not argue with him. God corrected his assumptions, not by shaming him, but by revealing what he could not see. You are not alone. And there were thousands he had not noticed. Fear had made him blind to community, and then God gave him direction, not a lecture, not an emotional reassurance, purpose, specific instructions, concrete next steps, because anxiety feeds on endlessness. And God interrupts it with movement. This is not a self-help framework. It is Scripture's record. Elijah did not lose his calling. He did not lose God's favor. He did not lose his place. But he was not allowed to stay in the cave. God did not glorify his hiding. He met him there, then led him out. This is the part of the story most people miss. God did not treat Elijah's anxiety as sin. He treated it as human limitation. He addressed the body first, then the mind, then the mission, in that order. This was not indulgence. It was precision. Because God does not confuse fragility with rebellion. The God who sent fire also sent bread. The God who shattered altars also whispered. The God who commanded kings also asked a tired man a question. And Elijah did not return to Mount Carmel the same. He returned quieter, slower, more human, and not alone. This story does not end with fireworks. It ends with companionship, with direction, with continuity. God did not replace Elijah, he restored him, not to his former intensity, but to endurance. And that is the difference. Intensity burns fast. Endurance lasts. This is not a story about fear being conquered. It is a story about fear being met. God did not erase Elijah's anxiety. He outlasted it. If this story tells us anything, it is not that faith prevents collapse. It is that collapse does not sever covenant. God did not demand Elijah become fearless. He taught him to remain present. And presence, not spectacle, is where God does his deepest work. Thank you for being here. If this story reached you, it is because God has always met his people not only in fire, but in whispers. And he still does.